All right, well, welcome everyone to the CNS Connect webinar series. My name is Amy Smith, and I'm the Director of Certifications for the ANA and the BCNS. Today, I am joined by Dr. Camille Freeman, who's going to share her expertise on promoting your practice without social media. If you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll watch for those. If we don't get to all the questions during the presentation, we'll take the questions at the end. As a reminder, if you're a CNS, you can earn 1 CEU for today's webinar in category number 5, which is professional development and does not have to have nutrition content. I will put a survey in the chat towards the end of the presentation for you to fill out to get that CE certificate. So let me tell you a little bit about our speaker today. Dr. Camille Freeman has been in practice as a registered herbalist and licensed nutritionist since 2003 with a focus on fertility and menstrual health. She runs Monday Mentoring, a community of practice for herbalists and nutritionists, and offers courses for highly trained herbalists and nutritionists who need help building and growing their practices. Camille is a professor at MUIH, where she teaches physiology and pathophysiology. She holds a doctorate in clinical nutrition from MUIH, as well as a BA in English from Rice University and a master's in herbal medicine from MUIH. She also has a master's in physiology and biophysics from Georgetown University. So thank you so much, Dr. Freeman, for joining us, and I will let you take it over.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Let me share my screen. Can y'all see
Yes.
this? Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, hello, everyone. I am delighted to be here. And while I am setting up this introduction, if you could post in the chat whether you are on social media or are not currently and how it's going for you, I would love to see that. I know some of you may be on the road or eating or something like that, so skip it if that's you. But if you're able to type in the chat and just let me know kind of where you are with social media currently, I think that would be really interesting to see. So the point of this webinar is to talk about how we can find clients without using social media. So I want to tell you just a little bit of a story about my personal adventures with this, and maybe that will be helpful to hear you before I jump into some of the specifics here. So I was on social media for a while. This was earlier. So Facebook was the big thing back then. I had a Facebook group and I was on there, and I'm actually pretty good at social media. And I eventually, due to some politics and things like that, I got to the point where I was like, for my own mental health, I am going to take a break for a year. So that was what I said. I was like, I really need to step away from this for a year. I did not close accounts. I didn't make any announcements. I just basically stopped going there. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but it was great. In fact, I didn't notice any decline in the number of clients that I was getting or the opportunities that were coming my way. And it was just so much clearer in my head about keeping my eyes in my own lane and being engaged with the types of things that I wanted to do without getting drawn into drama and so forth. So basically, I just never went back. I still have a Facebook account because I have children and I need to periodically go on there to sign them up for things. But I'm basically on there maybe once every 2 months or something like that. And I have a LinkedIn profile, which I occasionally post in, but I don't use that for finding clients or opportunities and things like that. So I think that was 2018 or 19 when I did that. I just haven't been on social since then. And like I said, I really have not had any trouble finding clients and finding participants for my programs and things like that. I also work with a lot of other practitioners on setting up their practices, building their practices, and so forth. And I know that this can be done. However, if you want to either move away from social media or really forego it entirely, you do need to have a strategy. You do need to think about it because, this is true regardless of social media or no social media. If you want to find more clients, there needs to be some thought put into it. We don't want to do the what do they call it? Spray and pray method, where you're just like, I'm just going to do a bunch of stuff and hope something works. We want to have a little bit more of a structured approach. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. And thank you so much to everybody who shared in the chat. It's really interesting to hear all these different approaches to social media. All right. So before you can do anything relating to finding clients, you need to at least have some preliminary answers to the questions on this slide. You need to be able, if I ask you, just let's say we meet at a conference or, MUIH graduation this weekend, or, out and about at the farmer's market, and I say, oh, what do? You need to have a very clear description of that. That's not just like, I'm a nutritionist. You need to have something where it's like, I'm a nutritionist and this is who I help or how I help. There needs to be some sort of specificity so that when I hear you say that, I'm like, oh, I know somebody in that category. So for example, if you say, what do you do? I'm not saying you need a niche necessarily, but you need a good way to help people think of you when they want to refer somebody. All right. So maybe that's a niche, maybe it isn't. But when you say what you do, you want people to kind of light up a little bit and be like, oh, I know that person. I know somebody who's in that category, or I'm in that category. You want to know who you care for. Who are you serving? Again, we can't serve everybody. This is a whole different webinar, and maybe we'll do that another time. But I need you to know who you want to help, because otherwise it's really, really hard to make this work. And again, it doesn't have to be a niche per se in terms of like a disease or a condition. It can be, I really want to have a local community-based practice. And so I want to serve people in my city, in my town, in my county. It could be moms of multiples. Anyway, there's all kinds of things that it could be, but I really want you to think about who you want to serve, because we have limited time on this planet. There's billions of people and you can't help them all. So who is it? Who are you best suited to serve? You also want to know what differentiates your practice. So on this very webinar, there could be 5 or 10 people who all are nutritionists focusing on metabolic health. And you're all probably excellent practitioners, but how would I know, like, what's different about your work that would help me say, oh, you are a better practitioner for me. That person is a better practitioner for somebody else. This is not to put down other people, but how do people choose? So maybe you are bilingual and that's a special thing that you offer, or maybe you have a very academic approach and you're like very research-based, or maybe you are, Hays aligned or whatever it is. But what are some of the special things about the way you practice that would help somebody decide if choosing among, 4, 5, 10 options, how would they know that you are a good fit for them? And then how would they know, oh, actually, maybe you're not a good fit for me. Maybe somebody else would be a better person to work with that particular individual. So we aren't going to cover these things in this webinar in depth, but I do want you to spend some time thinking about these, because this is the foundation of your marketing. And if you don't know these things, trying to do the rest of what we're going to talk about is just like fumbling around in the dark without a map. So you don't have to have them nailed down, written in stone, but I want you to be moving in the direction of answering these questions before you start to get fancy with any kind of marketing. All right. So let's move on to the topic of the actual webinar today. So first of all, define social media. These are very blurry lines. There's lots of new things popping up all the time. And what's social media, what's not, there's not a clear definition. I think most people would agree that those things over here on this left column count as social media. YouTube, Discord, like Mighty Networks or other types of private discussion forums that are not publicly available. Some people might consider that social media. Podcasts with chat options. Maybe some people would consider that social media. But ultimately, you decide. So when you say, I don't want to use social media, or I want to cut back on social media, you get to decide what that means. And there's not a right or a wrong. In fact, I don't think that every single person needs to quit social media or not use it. That's not the point of this webinar. Some people find that social media is really fulfilling for them. They enjoy the time they spend there. They find that they're connecting with people and getting lots of clients from it, and it's not harmful to them. Great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You also get to decide if you prefer to use it less, or if you're totally fine with YouTube, but you really find that Instagram isn't healthy for you or not where your clients are, or whatever else. So what I'm saying is, do not feel guilty one way or the other, whether you choose to use it or not, but be clear about it. Make your decision and be like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. There's not a right way. There's not a wrong way. You're not bad because you choose to use it. You're not bad because you don't choose to use it. It's up to you. And it's also up to you to say, like, yeah, where are your boundaries, and what do you want to include in your life and in your practice, and what doesn't seem to be serving you at this time. and you can change your mind. You can say, I'm not going to be on social media again for a year, for 2 years, and then change your mind later. You can change your mind a month later, because when you're in practice for yourself, you are in charge. All right. That's one of the nice things about running a practice. So here is, in my view, the general flow for how we find clients. And I made this up. I don't have a super excellent skills with graphics, so just bear with me here on the content. But the typical flow is, first of all, you need to meet people who don't already know about you. This is whether you use social media or not. If you want more clients than you currently have, there needs to be a strategy for you to meet people who aren't aware of your existence yet. This is where a lot of people struggle, because a lot of people put a lot of focus elsewhere. And when I say, okay, what are you doing to meet people who don't already know about you? They're like, posting on social media? I'm like, social media typically does not get you in front of people who don't already know about you. That's a different thing. So some of the common ways that you might meet people who don't know about you yet are social media, if you write or post something that gets shared widely. And again, for most people, that's pretty rare, but it is a possibility. Okay. Or if, there's excellent algorithms, blah, blah, blah. So that's one option. We also know that teaching classes and workshops, especially if they are through a community center or a yoga studio or somewhere that has a bigger audience than you do, or a different audience than you do, and you might have people coming to those classes who haven't met you yet. These can be online, these can be in person. Referral is a big one. The referrals can come from other practitioners, from other business owners, from current clients, past clients, colleagues, family, friends, anybody who's like, oh yeah, this person does that work. So that's a great way to meet people who don't already know about you and your work. There's advertising and SEO. If you don't know about SEO, that's search engine optimization. And that refers primarily to your website or content that you're posting online that might be searchable via Google or other search engines. I'm going to take a side avenue here and just tell you, I do not recommend spending a lot of time and money on advertising and SEO until A, you're really clear on those questions on that first slide. Who do you help? How do you help them? What's different about what you do? And B, this is really important, if you are going to spend money on advertising, especially like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, taking out an ad in the paper, any of those kinds of things, the website where you send people, if you send them to, let's say, some kind of sales page or landing page that's like, sign up for my mailing list or sign up for my clinic visit or whatever, and you have not tested that page, you are basically throwing money down the drain, because you can spend $100 on advertising and all these people come to your page. And if the page doesn't make sense to them, or if there's a broken link on the page, or the people that you're sending there aren't people that are resonating with the message on your page, they're not going to do anything. All that money you're spending on advertising doesn't help if you haven't made sure that the page you're sending them to resonates with the people you want to work with, and that people are buying things from that page. And for most people, that's going to take a couple years to do. So I don't recommend advertising and SEO for beginners unless you just happen to have a bunch of money to spend on this kind of thing and you don't mind playing around a little bit. Okay, but anyway, that is a possibility for how you can meet people or introduce yourself to people who you don't already know about your work. And then there is guest appearances. So that could be like being a guest on somebody else's podcast, or writing a guest blog post, or these types of things. And those are ways that you can, what they call, borrow other people's audiences and so forth. All right, so these are all options. There probably are other options. These are the big ones that I see nutritionists taking advantage of. These are all ways that you can interact with clients who possible clients who don't already know about you. Step 2 is that the client takes some kind of action to stay connected with you. So most people, when you just meet them out and about, are not actively like, gosh, I really wish I had a nutritionist to work on my metabolic health. They're not looking to sign up for that right this very second. The exception is if they're searching online or something like that, or referrals. But for the most part, people may, when they first meet you, may or may not be immediately ready to sign up. So there needs to be some way that people can stay connected and hear from you regularly. So the options are, you can have an email list, you can have a podcast, a blog, a YouTube channel, or you can have social media. Again, there's other options here likely, but these are the big ways that people can hear from you regularly. Once they sign up and they hear from you regularly, then we move on to this phase over here, which is they learn more about you and your vibe by engaging with whatever it is that you're putting out there. So it could be your email newsletters, your podcast episodes, the way you show up on Twitter or TikTok or whatever it is. Over time, they will learn more about you. They'll learn more about the type of work that you do. They will build trust in you. They will feel that they vibe with your energy, that you are somebody that could help them. And they will start to trust that they have the ability to feel better or make the changes they want to take as part of working with you. Those are two separate things. They trust you in your work, and they trust that they individually could have success or healing or improvement if they were to work with you. So part of it is, you sharing about your work, but part of it is also information about who can do this. You can do this, being encouraging with people, giving them hope if you think that's reasonable, and so forth. And then at this point, this is when people become a client, is once they have built trust in you, they understand what you do, and they understand how you might be able to help them, and you make an invitation, then they can become your client, potentially, if they're a good fit. This stage right here, the building up the trust, it takes time. Okay. So most of us are not super excited about going to share our most intimate medical problems with somebody that we just met on TikTok yesterday, because we don't know about this person. They could be a scam artist. They could be really weird. They could charge $2,000. Who knows what all the things are. So typically speaking, the more generic the content is, and the littler it is, the longer this takes. So social media, depending on how much time you're spending there and what type of content you have there, it could take a really long time to build trust. Same thing with, advertising, etc. If you show up at workshops, or if you have a referral from somebody that the person really trusts, that speeds up the process. They might already come in feeling a lot more trust and belief in themselves and in you than if they just stumbled across you on Google or on social media somewhere. So this is going to depend on, a bunch of different factors. But I do like to point out with people when they're like, this is taking so long, and I've been in practice for 3 months and I hardly have any clients. I'm like, yes, because it takes a long time for people to build up trust in order to come and work with you. So you need to be doing things to help people understand your work and to help them feel like you could be somebody to help them. If you're not doing that, it's really, really challenging to build a practice. So just to give you an example, I have people on my newsletter who have been on there for 4, 5, 6 years, and somebody bought something from me from the first time just recently. They've been on there for that long, and just now they've decided that they want something that I'm offering. So I'm not saying that everybody takes that long, but a lot of the things that you're doing on this chart have really long legs in that they don't necessarily pay off immediately. They can. It takes some time. It takes some time to do it. So if we decide we're going to not use social media, or we're going to cut way back on social media, this is what that means. Then we're eliminating this and this. So essentially, it's totally fine to eliminate social media if you have a really strong plan that involves some of these other items. So if you want to let go of social media, what is your plan instead? Are you going to really work on building referral networks? Are you really going to work on classes and workshops? How are you going to invite people to stay connected with you? And then how are you going to invite them to work with you? So we're going to talk about each of those steps individually. The big piece of this is that you need to show up in and for the community that you want to help. It does not work, or it very rarely works, I should say, because there are always rare exceptions to these things, but it doesn't work for you to just be like, well, I'm an expert and people should know that and find me. That's not going to happen. generally speaking. You want to be in community and think to yourself, how can I interact with people? How can I serve people? How can I let people know more about what is involved when they come and work with me, what I'm like? How can I build up this kind of trust? It doesn't have to involve social media, but you need to think, where are your people? One thing I'm always asking people, if you do want to be on social media, which again, amazing if it works for you, are your people on social media? Are the people that you want to help on social media? So if you want to help sort of like the 20 to 30-year-old crowd and you're over there on Facebook, they're not there, right? So you could be on social media all day if it's Facebook and you're trying to work with the recently college graduates. It's not going to happen. Same thing. There's certain groups of people who tend to show up in certain places on social media, in certain groups, in certain platforms, certain times of day, all of these things. So we want to know that. And again, side note, if you are doing social media for the purpose of building community and finding clients, every 3 to 6 months, I want you to ask yourself, am I finding clients from social media? Have I made any new connections? Are people joining my email list or signing up or whatever? And if they're not, it's not working. So you got to try something else. Okay, you need to change your social media strategy or need to try some of those other things on the slide I talked about. All right, so social media aside, where else are your people? Most folks aren't entirely on social media. They are other places as well, both online and in person. So I encourage you to make a big list of where you think your folks are. So are they taking yoga classes? Are they at the health food store? Are they at the farmer's market? Are they shopping at the Giant? Are they at daycare, school pickup and drop off? Are they on the PTA? Are they at the protest rally? Where are your folks? Are they going to the symphony? Just think about all of those things. I make the big list, even if you're like, I don't really know how I would incorporate nutrition with the symphony. That doesn't matter. Don't think about that. Just make a big list. And the more things you put on the list, the more ideas you will have. And you just never know when an idea will come to you about how you could make those things work. So some of them will be like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything with the symphony right now. But you might be like, oh, actually, I recall that my cousin is part of the symphony. And I wonder if there's a way I could talk to her about, do the people in the symphony need nutrition? Whatever. You don't know what kinds of ideas are going to come to you until you think about these things. So make a big old list of all the places that your current clients might be when they're not with you and when they're not on social media. And keep adding to it over time, like really keep it somewhere, perhaps in a practice notebook or something similar. And then think about which one of those spaces could you show up in. So maybe it is online spaces that are not social media. Maybe it is, my people really love taking yoga classes. And so I'm going to contact all the yoga studios in the area and see if any of them want to offer a workshop. Or maybe your people, like I do a lot of work with fertility. Many of my people are hanging out at fertility clinics. So I need to go perhaps see if I can collaborate, if I can do some kind of workshop, if I can write an article for the fertility clinic newsletter. These are the kinds of things that I might want to do. And then also think about how you can meet others who serve these communities. A lot of us, when we're talking about this or thinking about this, we go right to other healthcare practitioners. So we might think, oh, therapists, massage therapists, chiropractors, doctors, nurse practitioners, all these types of things. But also remember, there are other business owners who serve these communities as well that might be really interested in collaboration. For example, there are people who do websites for people in your community. There are people who run the barber shop or the hair studio or the tattoo studio, or like there's all these other types of people who could be really interesting sources of collaboration if there's a substantial crossover in the folks in your communities. And how could you show up and support in those ways? How could you collaborate with some of those businesses or people who are, maybe a little bit outside of the medical box, but still interesting? So I like to think about, like libraries, community centers, YMCAs, parks and rec departments. All of these things are, not necessarily directly medical, but you can meet a lot of people locally through these things. And many of them are really looking for people to come in and do classes and workshops and things like that. Or just saying hi and, making yourself known to some of these people could be really helpful. So this is a huge foundation of interacting. So basically, you're becoming part of the community. This is how you build your practice. It's not just you trying to rope in other people. You are weaving yourself into the community. You're supporting the community, and the community will start supporting you. So it's a bi-directional process. It's not just how can I get other people to come and work with me? It's how do I show up and serve people? How do I interact with other people, find out what they're doing, and so forth. Okay. So how are people going to get to know more about you? Well, I think the best way really is if they meet you live, either online or in person. You can pretty quickly get a feel for somebody and whether you're going to enjoy working with them, or whether, it seems like they might be somebody worth working with in a relatively short time. So a lot of people who are here at this webinar, I see a lot of names here of folks I don't know already. And probably, it's been almost 30 minutes, and some of you have come in less time than that. Probably most of you have a feel already if you're like, oh, cool, I could see working with Camille. Or if you're kind of like, just not my style, which is totally fine. But because we're here in real time and you're getting a feel for just my facial expressions and the way I move and my inflection, all of these things, it really helps people to be like, oh, I'd be interested in taking another class with this person. I would be interested in signing up to work with this person. So this is really one of my favorite ways. And I think this is probably the fastest way as well, if you're really like, I need to make this happen soon. So ideas would be classes or presentations. We already talked about some ideas for where you could do some of these things. Webinars, again, not quite as good as in person, but absolutely a good opportunity. And another thing is booths at fairs, these types of things. You want to see if some of these might be available to you. You can also have people getting to know your work when they interact with your content. So if you are posting videos, let's say you've decided YouTube is okay with you, you just don't want to be on Instagram. People can watch your videos and you might see them commenting there. If you post an article somewhere, a guest post, you post on your blog, you share, whatever you're doing, that's another way people can get a feel for you and your work. You can write for a newspaper, you can write for a magazine, you can write for a popular blog, a journal, all these types of things. And then podcasting, either your own or guest appearances. And then lastly, we've talked about being introduced to you by somebody else who already does know you, appreciate your work, understand kind of your values and the type of work that you do. That can be really powerful for people. Okay, so remember what I said. I cannot stress this enough. After they meet you, the client should have a way to stay in touch. Okay. I feel like if you think of nothing else after you end this webinar, please, like, especially if you're going to forego social media, let's say you go out, you teach a webinar like this, or you teach a class at the yoga studio, or whatever you're going to do. You don't just teach the class and hope for the best. You say to them, hey, I have a newsletter that I send out every Thursday with, one quick and healthy recipe that, supports metabolic health. I just made that up. Let's see. That's what you have. You tell people and you say, if you want to sign up for it, I'd love to have you on there. Put your name right here. I'll add you to it. I don't ever sell your name. Or whatever it is that you do. You say, if you want to stay in touch, I have a podcast. I publish it every Thursday. It's 15 minutes long. You can listen to it on the way to work every morning. And it will encourage you to keep going when it's really hard. But give people a way to stay in touch and hear from you regularly. The key to this, giving people a way to keep in touch and hearing from you regularly, is also that you actually then have to keep in touch with them regularly, right? So a lot of people have the email list and they're like, but I don't actually email anybody because I don't know what to say, or it seems really hard, or there's only 4 people on my list and therefore I'm not going to email it, or whatever. So you need to follow through on your word and actually show up if somebody has raised their hand and said, yes, I would love to hear from you regularly. You need to be there where you said you were going to be. So I think that email list, if you're not going to be on social media, I think it's essentially mandatory. You really need an email list if you are not on social media. You might be able to get by with a podcast or a YouTube video or some channel or something like that, but email is going to be much more effective. But like I said, then you need to email people. Don't worry about the size, especially if you are doing a one-on-one practice. You do not need thousands of people on your email list. You just need the right people on there, and you need to show up regularly, and you need to serve them with what you are writing. Over time, it will grow if you are serving the people well and showing up and helping them through your email list. Again, do not worry about the numbers, especially in the beginning. Even if it's just your mom, that's okay. Just write like you are writing to your clients. You need to practice. The first emails you write to your email list are going to suck, and that's okay. You're finding your voice. The good news is if it's just your mom, only your mom is going to read it, and your mom loves you no matter what. Okay. Most of the time. So as you get more people, you'll be getting more practice as long as you're writing regularly. And then by the time more and more people are joining your list, you'll be in a flow, you'll have your voice, you'll have a rhythm, and it won't feel so awkward and embarrassing to write to your list. Okay. Email lists. And here, I mean, when I say email requires mind management, I mean email newsletters, writing them. It's a lot of mind management because you're like, the biggest thing I see people doing is feeling like you're spending 3 or 4 hours a week writing your email newsletter because you're like summarizing a study, and then you're putting in 4 recipes, and then you're revising and re-revising your message and adding a picture and the links and, all these things. And y'all do not do that. Make it short, make it sound like it comes from you, and make it useful to the client you want to serve. Not to your mom, even if your mom is the only one on there. Just pretend that your mom is a client you want to serve. So if your clients are fertility, undergoing fertility treatments, write an email that would be helpful for fertility folks to hear. Don't worry about if only 4 people are on there and 3 of them are your friends from school and one's your mom, and none of them are trying to get pregnant. That's okay. You write the email to the people you want to work with, and make it short, make it fit into your schedule. It does not need to be long. In fact, it's better if it's not. I should be able to read it, and it should sound like it came from you. Okay. And then give people a reason to sign up. It doesn't have to be a freebie. That's one option, but you can also just say, hey, I send out this message once a week, once a month, on the full moon, on the new moon. I do a ritual around food. I give you a mindfulness practice, whatever. Pick one thing and give people a reason that they might want to get it. Not just like, stay in touch with me. That's not super compelling, but maybe for your people, maybe it is super compelling. Oh, I would really like to get a recipe that takes 15 minutes and makes a good healthy dinner once a week. That would super help me. So that I would sign up for that. I don't need a freebie. If you want to do a freebie, you can, but you can also just give people a reason to want to get your emails and then write really good emails. Each email should be helpful for people. Okay. At the end of the email, have a little bio of yourself, like, oh, Camille Freeman is a herbalist and nutritionist focusing on fertility and menstrual health. Sign up for an appointment here. It's not a promotional email per se, but you're just reminding them who you are and what you do every single time you write, and giving them a link. So if a lot of times what I find in my practice is that I send out my regular newsletter. I haven't promoted anything. I haven't said, oh, I want you to sign up for this, that, or whatever, but people get the email newsletter, and then they're like, oh yeah, I meant to sign up for an appointment with Camille. It just brings me to the surface of their mind, and then they sign up for something that wasn't in the email at all. But I want to make it easy for them by giving them a link in the newsletter so they can just click it and sign up for the thing. Okay, so make it easy to get to your website from your newsletter, even if you're not promoting something. Again, we can do a whole nother class on email newsletters some other time, because that's like a whole nother thing. Okay, why are we doing this? And again, I'm saying newsletters here. You could, like I said, you could do podcasts or something, but newsletters are more effective. Just take it from me. Why do we do this? One, we're reminding people periodically that we exist. Most people, when they first meet you, are not immediately in the market for your work. But over time, the more you contact them and the more you interact with them, the more they will remember you when it is time, or when a friend says, oh, I've been looking for somebody to help me with my headaches, or, my food allergies, or whatever it is. So you're just you're just coming to the surface of their mind periodically, and the more regularly, the better. Also, you can help people. A lot of people don't have the time, don't have the money, are too shy, or whatever. They're not going to come see you. You can still serve them via your newsletter. You can still do the work you're meant to do in the world at scale by just doing it in your newsletter. So if your goal is like, I just really want to help people learn to love vegetables, and that's your mission in this world, you could absolutely do that via newsletter. You're not providing personalized nutrition advice, but you can say like, hey, if you hate broccoli, or you think you hate broccoli, maybe check out this recipe because it's actually pretty good. Okay, so do that. Serve people here so that you can help more people, even if they can't come and see you one-on-one. Doesn't have to take you a long time, doesn't have to be a big thing, but those small things can really, really help people. Also, you're giving people a chance to feel out what you are like. This is why I really don't recommend trying to write a stuffy formal newsletter unless you're a very formal person and that's indicative of what it might be like to work with you. And then in that case, take out the stuffy part. I'm sure it's lovely. But make your emails sound like you. If you have a really weird sense of humor, or you love Star Trek, or you like to use lots of exclamation points, do it. And then the people who don't like that, just let them go, because they're not your people. So sound like yourself in them. And then also use it to help people understand what kind of work you do and when it's right to work with you. So for a lot of people, they might kind of understand nutritionists, but they probably think, oh, that's just if I want to lose weight or if I have diabetes or something. So you can help educate them. You can do like mini case studies, or you can say, yeah, a lot of people are confused about whether working with a nutritionist would be right for them. Let me just tell you this little story about how you know it's time. You just spread things like that. You help people understand when it's the right time. You help them understand that this is work they can do, that it is possible for them to learn to love vegetables, or to, balance their gut flora, or whatever all the things that you particularly like to do in your work. Okay. Now, next piece. And this is one where sometimes people skip this step because you're like, well, I sent my newsletter and it did have the link to my website in there, but you actually have to invite people to work with you overtly, not like, well, they should just know that they should schedule an appointment when they see my newsletter. That is not how it works. This is, again, true if you're on social or not on social. Periodically, you need to explicitly invite people. And the metaphor that I love, and I heard this on a podcast somewhere, and I cannot for the life of me remember which one, or I would give them credit. But somebody was giving an analogy of when you go over to somebody's house, maybe somebody you don't know very well, and you go and you're sitting in their living room and you're having a little chat. And let's say that person gets up and they're like, oh, I've got to take a phone call. Help yourself to anything in the fridge if you get hungry. You're not actually going to go in their fridge while they're taking a phone call. That's weird. You're not just going to rummage around in there and be like, yeah, I could use a lemonade. I'm just going to pour some lemonade out of this pitcher and sit back down on the couch. That's not going to happen. But if the person comes back from their phone call and they're like, oh, hey, I'm pouring a glass of lemonade, would you like one? And you're thirsty, you would probably be like, yes, I would love one. Thank you. Okay, so there's an explicit invitation. You are free to say like, oh, no, I'm sorry, I am allergic to citrus. Nobody's going to be offended if you decline, but you're much more likely to say yes and drink the lemonade if somebody offers it to you, versus if they're like, yeah, just look around and take what you want. It's in there somewhere. And that if you don't explicitly invite people to come work with you, you're doing the just rummage around my fridge plan. That is not likely to work very well for most people. So I'm not saying every single email you need to invite people to work with you. In fact, I don't recommend that. But every so often, again, whether you're social, email, newsletter, podcast, or whatever, you do need to invite people. Once every, say, 3, 4, 8 emails, depending on your own comfort and cadence, you need to say, hey, as a friendly reminder, I work one-on-one with people who have, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and hypertension. If you've been a little worried about any of these things, I'd love to work with you too. I have openings in the next month. Here's how you sign up for them. Here's a little bit more about my work. Done. That's the end of the story. You have explicitly said, I would love to work with you. Click here if you would like to work with me as well. You give them the overt invitation, not the like, you've written 7 paragraphs and at the bottom of the last one, there's a little like, learn more now. I know some of you are like, oops, that's okay. We're all learning. It's totally fine. Okay, so referrals very quickly, because I want to make sure we've got some time for questions. Referrals is an excellent way to build your practice. And I have lots of clients who have a business built almost exclusively on referrals. They really don't need to do much else, but you need to have the referrals. You need to have the referral partners in order to make this work. So who can refer you people? Almost anybody that you know. The trick here is that you need to talk about what you do. So for how many of you does your aunt know what you do and who you help and how to send somebody to you? Have you explicitly told your friends and family, hey, by the way, I started my clinical practice, or I'm celebrating my 5th year in clinical practice. I just wanted to make sure that you know what I do. I'm open for new clients. Here's what I love doing. I'm so grateful if you could send people my way. Make sure that the people who know and love you, even if it's not health related people at all, make sure they know what you do and how to send people to you, and that you have a website, for example. I have had people who are potential clients who haven't signed up to work with me yet. They're on my newsletter, so they know about me, and they might, if they hear somebody else saying like, oh, I'm really looking for somebody to help me with this, they might be like, oh, well, Camille does that. So again, if you're doing a good job with your newsletter, you can actually get referrals from clients who haven't signed up to work with you yet. Current clients, past clients, other practitioners, or like I talked about before, the person who owns the bowling alley, the person who owns the yoga studio. These are other folks that you could strike up a conversation with, and so forth. So here's a couple of quick skills. Friends and family, tell them what you do. Let them know how to refer. Ask for help. And my advice is that you do not use friends and family as test clients to build a practice. You can use friends and family if you're like, I just want to see if this link works. Great. You want to have them fill out a form. Great. They're terrible clients, you all. Send them to your friends. Do not. It's just going to be an uphill battle. It's my advice to you. I learned that the hard way. Okay, what about potential clients? If somebody has said, oh, hey, I'd love to work with you, but maybe the time wasn't right, maybe the finances weren't in order, you absolutely can reach out to them and say, hey, it was so fun talking to you last December. I just wanted to touch base and say, hi, I've got an opening next month. If you're interested, let me know. If not, not a problem at all. Just you remember, you be the one who says like, oh yeah, that person was interested and kind of dropped off the radar. Why don't I circle back to them? You be the person to take that initiative. What about current or former clients? Y'all, getting current or former clients to come back in is so much easier than finding a new client. Please do an excellent job staying in touch with your current and former clients. So get yourself a system so that you remember to check in if they forgot to schedule their follow-up, or if you haven't heard from them in 3 months, you make that top of mind. It does require good systems, but it makes a huge difference. Ask them, how are you doing? I just want to see how that calcium supplement's going for you. Testimonials, there are some ethical issues with asking current clients for testimonials or former clients that you suspect might come back to work with you. So I just like to throw in there that I'm a little cautious about that. I personally don't do it. But if you do ask clients for testimonials, please be very aware of the power dynamic and the fact that they may feel pressured to say something nice, even if that wasn't their experience. So anyway, that's just something to be aware of. The other thing is be really good at what you do. If you are really good at what you do, the word will start spreading. I do not mean over deliver. Okay. I do not mean instead of spending 3 hours on a client, you spend 6 and you Canva their recommendations and you do all this stuff. But what I am saying is think about how you can help the best, how you can support them, and do those things, like do the special touches that make it really special, that show the person that you care about them and that you've thought through how can you make this as easy as possible for the person to reach their goal or to feel better. And then ask for feedback and really hear it. So it's not always easy to get feedback and people are like, that was too hard, or it was too brusque. And I didn't like your bedside manner or whatever, but be willing to hear it and then improve because of it, because that is how you will continue to grow as a practitioner. If you feel stuck where you are, or if you feel like you haven't grown as a practitioner, that's not a good sign. So we want to continue to evolve and get better and better at what we do, no matter if it's been 5 months or 5 years since we started practicing. You should always be thinking about how you can streamline things and make this a better experience for everybody involved. Other practitioners, have a really good referral list. Go to networking events. This is my favorite. Tell your current providers what you do. So your dentist, does your dentist know that you're a nutritionist? I think dentists are excellent referral partners, because who is better to know, like, this person really needs to cut back on their sugary beverages. Yes, they can refer people to you if they need help with that. But yeah, if you have a massage therapist or a chiropractor or whatever, talk to them about what you do. My eye doctor, one time I wore a shirt that just had a like an herbal conference shirt when I was getting my eyes checked. And we had a great conversation. And, it turns out she's really interested in herbs and wanted to know more about what I do. And we talked about the safety of cinnamon, and, it was like a great conversation. But, just let people know. If somebody sends you a referral, send a thank you note, obviously without any client information in it. Think about how you might be able to help other practitioners or business owners. So it's not just, would you send me your clients? How can you support their work? How can you be beneficial for their clients? And it is absolutely ethically okay to get testimonials from other practitioners. So if you want another practitioner to say like, oh my gosh, Camille's work has been incredible for my clients. We, I'm so grateful that we have a partnership and whatever. That's a great way to get a testimonial without getting into some of that murky area. All right. So last thoughts, because I imagine people are going to have some questions to go over. So final thoughts for you about finding clients without social media. First of all, be your weird self. Do not change who you are to try to be more, quote, professional. Like, you are highly trained. You are great just like you are. Show your personality. Be yourself. You are going to attract people who are a good fit for you and repel people who aren't, and that is perfect. It just takes a lot of courage to be like, yes, I'm not for everybody. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. That's all right. But they won't know that, and you won't be expressing it unless you show your personality and what's distinct about you and what you do. Do not wait until things are perfect to start. So with the social media, you might be like, oh, okay, well, I need to set up my email list and get it connected to my website. And then I need to have like the first 4 drafts written, and I need to hire a VA to do the back end and write, copy edit. And then y'all, do not. Just start. And then you can see what you need to do. Write a crappy email. That's okay. You can write a crappy email, and then you'll get better at the next email. Do not get everything perfect before you publish your website or before you publish whatever. If you can't figure out how to connect your email list to your website, just send people, manually send people to the form on the newsletter area. Make it work. Don't worry about making it perfect. Nobody cares as much about your website as you do. So just don't worry about that. Like, get it good enough and start. Start writing your newsletter. Start telling people you have a newsletter. Collect their information. Even if you have to write it down by hand and put it on there manually, fine. That's totally fine. In the beginning, you're not going to have a ton of people signing up, and you can do that. Just start putting yourself out there. Think to yourself, where are my people? And be there. Do not wait until everything's all lined up. This is a big thing I see a lot of people doing. Lastly, do not hide behind administrative tasks. So if you want to find more clients, if you're not happy with the amount of clients that you currently have, you need to be out there interacting with potential clients. So if I ask you, what did you do this week to interact with people, like actual individual people? And you're like, well, I updated my sales page on my website. That you didn't interact with any people. I need you to be emailing referral partners. I need you to be going to the networking event or setting up a class and teaching it at the library. I need you to be reaching out to that client who said they wanted to refer their uncle to you and being like, oh, thanks so much. Here's how you do that. I need you to be checking in on your current clients. I need you to be sending out the email and responding to people who reply to your email. Do all those things, like show up, be visible. Do not hide behind the admin tasks. If you're spending all of your time behind the computer screen, setting up your forms and whatnot, you're not going to find new clients because you haven't done anything to find new clients. Okay. And I just thought of one last thing I do want to say before we have questions, which is another way that you can start to build relationships is to show up at stuff like this or any other kind of continuing education stuff that you're part of. Like, show up live like you have already done, participate, and then email people afterwards. Be like, oh, hey, I really love that training you did on IBS. That was amazing. Here's a question I had, or thanks so much for all the time you put into it. Like, show up and thank people. If they write a great newsletter and you're like, wow, this IBS practitioner really helped me, write them back and be like, oh yeah, that was really great. I work with IBS too. And I hadn't thought about this way. That person will will start to remember you, and maybe they'll refer a client to you when they are full, or maybe the two of you will teach a webinar together or whatever. But again, showing up live instead of watching the recording, which you have already done, yay. Showing up live, interacting with people, posting in the chat, sending thank you notes to people, replying to their newsletters, showing up for their things that they're doing. These all go a long way to helping you be visible and helping people know what you do and what kind of person you are. All right. So I hope this was helpful to get you started. It absolutely can be done, but it requires some effort. I would love to hear your questions. I have a website, CamilleFreeman.com. I have a newsletter for practitioners. It goes out on Thursdays once a week. I share stuff that's helpful for practitioners. So if you would like to join it, I would love to have you. It's just CamilleFreeman.com/newsletter. And yeah, let me hear your questions. I think we have one in the Q&A. Annie is saying, it sounds like many of your outreach is client direct. Do you have tips on connecting clients through fellow health practitioner referrals? Yes. So I think we covered that a little bit, Annie, but I can expand a little bit. So my best tip is, a lot of people think immediately, oh, doctors or primary care practitioners, and y'all, they are busy. And if you don't already know them, the response rate is really, really low for cold outreach emails or stopping by or, whatever you want to do. So you can absolutely do that. But if you have no like you don't have a shared client, you don't have you have no connection to this person whatsoever, it's not super fruitful in my experience. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying don't have high expectations. And if you do find somebody to work with, amazing. I have found that if you want to reach out to other practitioners in particular, first of all, you do a little research about the person. So for example, like poke around on their website and see, like, do they have anything on there about diet or nutrition whatsoever? Do they have a special emphasis on ADHD or a specific technique that they do? And so you can reach out and be like, oh, hey, I'm a nutritionist. I'm really interested in this biofeedback technique. Are you open for referrals, or could we meet up to talk more about it? Indicate that you have read up on them and that you have something in common. And that will be better than just like, oh, I'm a nutritionist, would you add me to your referral list? The other thing is, when you are sending these referral emails, I'm going to assume we're going to do this via email. When you're sending these referral emails, don't be like, oh, hey, would you meet me for coffee for 30 minutes? Again, somebody who doesn't know you, that's a really big ask. Make it easy for them. So you could start out by just saying like, oh, hey, I'm building my referral network. I'm new to the area. I just got licensed, whatever it is. I'm looking for other practitioners who are HAES aligned, or, I think PT, pelvic floor PT is a great combo with nutrition. Could I add you to my referral list, and could you share a little bit more about your practice? Are you taking new clients? That's an easy ask for somebody. If they write back and you have a good vibe, you could be like, oh, would you be open to meeting up for 15 minutes on Zoom? Or if they're locally, like 15 minutes for coffee, then you could do that. But I wouldn't do that as a first cold email. Like, make it a very easy ask, which is basically like, reply and tell me something about your practice. Or, are you open to this? That's my recommendation. And that tends to work really well. And then, like I said, talk to your own practitioners about what you do. All right. So Anonymous is saying, do we have any tips on crafting your message on what you do, who you serve, etc.? I do have a lot of tips on that. And it's like it's a whole webinar. I think the biggest thing I can tell you in a short period of time is, first of all, to think about what you are really passionate about outside of nutrition. So for example, if you're a big knitter, or if you're a dog lover, or like I said, you love Star Trek or whatever, are there people in that community that you already know a lot about that you can serve? So think about those types of things. And then also practice. If you already know who you want to serve, but you're just stuck on how you say it, then you just need to practice saying it a lot. You run it by your accountability group, the people you graduated from school with, people you know online, all of these types of things. Because you're totally right. It is the first step of marketing, is being able to describe what you do and who you help. The other thing that sometimes helps me is if I think about things I really don't like. So for example, I do a lot of work with people around like business and promotion and marketing. And when I was first getting started with some of this work, I realized that something that super irritates me is when people are manipulative with their marketing and, like, for example, don't share their price, or there's like all these weird, gross techniques. And so then I realize, oh, okay, that's something that's really important to me. So when I'm talking about what I can do, I can incorporate that in how I explain it, that we're going to focus on doing this without manipulating people and doing it in an ethical manner. So think about, do you really, really hate it when people are getting misinformation about supplements? Or, for me, it's like, oh, people come in and they're on like 45 different supplements. And how did they get to this point? That's a big point of irritation for me. So I could talk about that in my description. Okay, so Lori is saying, can you give some examples of in-person events you've engaged in that have been a positive experience for you and your business? Yes, so because of the pandemic, I have not been out and about very recently. So in person, all of this is going to be dated. From my people, health fairs are not very fruitful for me. I know people who do have great success with health fairs. So you have to try them out and see what's going to work for you. That is an option. I have actually found for me that the teaching is the best. So for example, teaching at the library, teaching at the garden club, just a very basic class, like, what's the deal with seed oils? Or, should you be taking a multivitamin or not? These types of things. Those are what works best for me. But that might be because I love teaching. I have a lot of experience teaching. So I encourage you to just try different opportunities out and about with in-person events to see what's going to resonate most with you and with your people. Like, where are your people and what do you do really well? Okay, so Tammy is saying, I've done a little research to find out where my potential clients community would be. It wasn't helpful. Your target audience, women 35 to 60, they are on Pinterest. Not accurate. Okay, so I think part of the issue is that that's too broad. Like women 35 to 60, if you were to be like, oh, Camille, I'm a nutritionist and I support women who are 35 to 60, I do not know who to send your way. I mean, I know hundreds of women who are 35 to 60, and I don't, like, you would not just pop up to the top of my mind because of saying that. Now, if you said, I support women age 35 to 60 who have been recently diagnosed with IBS, that's a different story. Or, I support librarians who are looking to get out of their career and having a lot of stress and problem sleeping. That's easier for me to be like, oh, okay. So you need to be much more specific is part of the issue, because it's if you're like, oh yes, adults or whatever, even just children, you need to be more specific. Now, I'm not saying that you have to totally limit your entire practice to, former librarians or something like that. But I am saying, if you want to specifically try to work with these people, narrow as much as you can. You don't have to exclude other people from your practice, but I'm saying where you're putting your focus should be pretty narrow. And to give you an example from that, like I said, I focus primarily in my clinical work on fertility and menstrual health, but, and I have since 2003, that's been my focus. At any given time throughout those, almost 20 years now, I've had at least half of my practice has nothing to do with fertility and menstrual health, even though my whole marketing focus, everything I talk about is all that. But what happens is people are like, oh, that was really helpful. My father-in-law has this. And if I have room, I'm happy to take her father-in-law or whatever else. So even if you focus on an area and you're like, it seems very narrow and I don't think there's that many librarians, and like, that doesn't mean your practice is you're kicking out everybody else who's not a librarian. What I'm saying is, in order to do really solid marketing and promotion, you've got to get narrower, and you can accept people from all different venues, but narrow it, narrow it from there. Okay. Yes. Oh, Kiara, this is such a good question. Is there a certain percentage of time you're devoting per week? Amy, is it okay if we just spend like a couple extra minutes to answer this one?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
So the question is a certain percentage of time you're devoting per week for the practice building. Yes. Okay. So this is such a great question. My recommendation is you take the amount of time you have in your week for your work total. Some of you may have other jobs, you may have parenting or caregiving responsibilities, etc. So let's say you've got 20 hours a week that you can devote to your practice. 50% of that time should be either directly working with clients, client notes, charting, emailing client, answering their questions, all that. So that's 50% of the time. Then you've got another 50% of the time, and you want to equally split that between marketing, kind of promotion stuff, and admin, which is like, invoicing and updating your website and all the back end things that don't actually directly get you clients. If you don't have clients to fill the 50%, that time is also spent on marketing and promotion. So not on admin. This is where people go wrong. They're like, oh, but it's so much easier and not as hard to update my website. But no, you spend extra client time. If you don't have enough clients, you spend that on marketing. All right. I feel like that's probably a good place to stop. Thank you all for being here.
I put the CE survey in the chat. So for all the CNSs, make sure you complete that. And I will send the recording out either tomorrow or early next week. So everyone who registered will get the recording. And if you have follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to Camille. And thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Camille, for joining us. I think this was a great topic. Everyone is really interested in how to learn other opportunities besides social media. So I think that it was really great to hear the other options that we have.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.